Welcome into the Ben Burnett Show. My guest today is the one and only Hannah Palmquist. Hannah works with Attorney General Chris Carr. She is very public-facing in his human trafficking unit. I probably got all that wrong, so I'll let you correct me in just a second. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Do you get nervous? Does this make you nervous?
It's a little different than the public speaking I'm accustomed to, which is mostly in the courtroom, but it's exciting to do something new.
Talk about, what did I mess up when I described your role? Like, what did I get wrong?
No, you got it right. You got it right. So Attorney General Chris Carr, he started the state's first human trafficking prosecution unit. The first unit that spreads across the entire state of Georgia is focused on recovering missing children, investigating and prosecuting those who buy and sell children for sex. I had the privilege in 2019 of starting that unit with him. It's been 7 years now. Now my role is becoming a bit more external. Now I'm in external engagement, where we're spreading the word and figuring out how to work with the community, the nonprofits, the public sector to stop kids from getting into the courtroom in the first place.
Who's the coolest person you've met doing this?
Wow. Okay, this is going to be a long list, but let me start here. I'm
going to start fun before I get heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't be where we are talking publicly about human trafficking, building the team that we built, if it hadn't been for First Lady Marty Kemp. So First Lady Marty Kemp, when she's on the trail with her husband, there weren't these rally cries to fight human trafficking. People weren't giving them public pressure, save the people in human trafficking. It goes unreported. These are people not a lot of people are listening to. What happened is along the trail, she was approached by human trafficking survivors who said, "We are not being heard. We're not being seen." She listened to it, even though it wasn't the most popular public issue, took it upon herself to make it a priority in the state of Georgia. Obviously, the governor alongside of her, and then my boss, Attorney General Carr, set out to build that unit. So if we're talking about the coolness factor, I have to start with First Lady Marty Kemp. She's incredible.
I was going for like a celebrity. Like, you got The Bachelor. I mean, like somebody where you're like, I can't believe I got to meet them.
If you want, well, to me, like, she's a hero. She's a celebrity to me and so many people.
I'm not putting her down.
No, absolutely. And I know it. But truly, for me, she's such an example of what I think a female leader should be. Grace, but also a heck of a lot of moxie, which is a combination I just love. If you want another, I have to say Tim Tebow.
Oh, that's cool.
A lot of people are Tim Tebow fans. I'll be the first to say I never really paid attention to Tim Tebow as a football player. I'm not one to get a bit starstruck about celebrities. But I had the opportunity to spend some time with him.
Still not over it.
I know it, and I understand, and I respect that. But I've had an opportunity to spend some time with him doing this work. And while I never would have said, I'm a fan of Tim Tebow, the football player, man, I'm a fan of Tim Tebow, the human.
I want to get into, like, background education. Where are you from? What do you study? Why do you study it? How in the world do you wind up here? Like, take me through the story, because there's plenty of people interested in, I would say, public sector. We'll go law enforcement. That's unfair. Judicially things. Talk about how kind of your pathway to getting into it.
I'm going to take you back to rural Minnesota. That's where I grew up. We'll see if my accent starts coming out as I tell this story.
It's always out.
Is it?
It's always out.
I now say y'all because I've been here a long time, but I also say oofta. Do you know the expression oofta?
No.
So in the Midwest, an expression that just means wow or a lot, you say oofta. You got to kind of say it from the gut, oofta.
Okay.
I'll get you to say it.
So Minnesota, are you like a Viking?
Heck yeah.
You've got do you have the Viking blood? Is that like your people came over from Scandinavian countries?
A bit of it.
Yeah.
Swedish, Irish.
Oh, yeah.
So picture grew up essentially in the woods. So there's woods, and you look to the other side, and there's just cornfields as far as the eye can see. They have a McDonald's now, but when I was growing up there, we're talking dirt roads. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I was driven to find something just with complexity, with nuance and complexity. And that is what drove me to seek out going to law school. Now, when I was growing up, I didn't know lawyers, but I knew a lot of farmers, right? But I didn't really have somebody to look to say, how is it that I can get to law school? So there was one public school, those areas, there's one school everybody goes to. I go into the high school library when I'm a young teenager. I go on the internet and I just type into the internet how to get into law school. And that's how I figured it out.
And that was it.
That was it.
What did you study in undergrad?
In undergrad, so I went for English, but I took a second major with communication studies.
I believe both of those things. Is how much of the job, like especially early, is like writing, legal writing?
It's a lot of it. So you do that in law school. Once you get into particularly public service, if you become a prosecutor or a defense attorney, particularly if you work for the public defender's office, it's not as much writing. If you go federal, you're going to do a heck of a lot more writing. What's interesting is I grew up, just loving reading and writing. Even if you don't do that in your job on a continual basis, though, that skill set is completely transferable. Because if you read, if you write, you know how to shape a narrative and a story. And that's what we're doing in court, in opening statements and closing arguments, in direct examination, helping people to tell their stories. So the skill sets that you use when you write are absolutely transferable into the courtroom.
Law school at Emory.
Law school at Emory.
Did you move down here to go to law school and had never been? Like you picked it, right? Sight
unseen. So it's as unsophisticated as me figuring out how to go to law school. I hadn't been to a lot of these places, didn't have the resources to go visit law schools and see what I liked. I just knew I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to see something new, to do something exciting. So what I did is I started going to college when I was in high school. There was a state university about 40 minutes away, and I'd get in the car and I'd drive every day to get that year of college for free. And then when I was 21, so I had sent my applications just based on LSAT score, GPA, taking into account that I'd gone to a state school, great school, but you have to take that into account when you sort of look at where do I think I could get into law school, and just sent them a handful of applications around the country. And back then, you didn't get your acceptance via email. I'm sure that's how it happens these days.
The letter.
But if it was a little letter, you knew it was a rejection. If it was an acceptance, it was this big packet.
That's right. I forgot about this.
Right? So
things my children will never know.
They're missing out. So I walked down the gravel driveway, opened that mailbox, and it was this big old packet from Emory. I open it up, and it says, "You've been summoned."
Oh, that's cool. Well, that's also like, you take that for granted. That's one of life's great days. You know what I mean?
It's fantastic. It really was. It was absolutely life-changing for me. So I accepted that sight unseen.
When you go through, let's get through the 3 years of law school, and now you've passed the bar and is it legal? You're like allowed to practice. Talk about looking for a first job and how do the kids in law school, when you're choosing what you want to do, what should they be mindful of? Because we can easily go the public sector route, but there's also 1,000 ways. You went to school with a lot of people who do a lot of different things. Talk to the kids.
First of all, it starts before you graduate law school. So I came down 21 years old, going to Emory, absolutely a fish out of water, and spent that whole first year feeling like the dean or somebody was going to approach me and tell me it had been some sort of mistake, right? I just felt like I didn't fit in whatsoever. So nervous to be there. I took a class my second year of law school taught by adjunct professors, which means they've got a full-time job, but they come in the evenings and they teach. And this particular course was trial techniques, and it was taught by multiple prosecutors from DeKalb County. And so I went to their evening class because I wanted to learn, how to give an opening statement, how to give a closing argument. They walk in, and these guys are just my absolute heroes. But for me, I'm a naturally introverted person. I don't naturally like public speaking. So they have me get up, give that fake opening statement. And I was as nervous as can be. I still remember my knees shaking. But the one thing I did know how to do is that narrative, how to frame the story, how to argue without arguing, how to present the facts. So I sit down, just grateful it's over. And I'll never forget, shout out to John Melvin, who was one of my adjunct professors. He just walks over, he looks at me, and he says, "You have a gift." And he walked away.
Were you like, me? That?
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. But he couldn't have known how much I needed to hear that from somebody who was doing the work. Because, man, those guys were just my heroes. They were so cool. In the middle of class, they'd have to take a break so that they could get a phone call about whether a DNA test had a match. And I was like, man, I want to be these guys when I grow up. So I did that, and I did mock trial to get over my fear of public speaking. Had some incredible instructors there. And then what happened is the gentlemen who were teaching the class, who were prosecutors during the day at DeKalb County, offered me an internship. And I got to go intern at the office, work on incredible cases. They gave me an office that was literally a closet. So throughout law school, as the years went on, I just wanted to spend every minute at the DeKalb DA's office, working those cases and pouring through the evidence. And then once I got out of law school, past the bar, they offered me my first real job. So I did that for a bit. And then when then District Attorney Vic Reynolds got elected in Cobb County, he gave me an interview, brought me on, and I stayed for 7 years before Chris Carr called me.
When you are taking early cases, like first out of school as a prosecutor, is it just like, do you have a focus, or are you the jack of all trades, master of none? It's going to be like DUIs and breaking and enterings and domestic abuse situations and everything under the sun? Or do you say, hey, I'd like to concentrate on this? I imagine it's the former and not the latter.
Right. It takes a minute to concentrate. It takes a minute to specialize. It's really important at the beginning that you get all sorts of foundational experiences. I was really lucky in the sense that a lot of prosecutors start out, and it's a really great route, start out by prosecuting misdemeanors. Go be an assistant solicitor, prosecute the DUIs, the dog bites, misdemeanor theft. I started in Superior Court prosecuting felonies. I look back at photos now, and I'm like, man, I was 24 years old. What were they thinking letting me do this? But I had some great mentors. So I started off prosecuting felonies. The first case I ever had that I tried by myself, I was 24 years old prosecuting an armed robbery.
Were you like, let's throw the book at him, or were you reasonable? Could I, if I just like, say I've been in trouble once before and then I cross your desk, are you negotiating with me, or are you like sending me away? I want to know who Hannah is. Always
Open-minded. And I think one of the most important qualities of a good prosecutor is to be humble, to be open-minded, to listen to the facts. If a defense attorney calls you and says, hey, I've got some exculpatory evidence, man, you better listen. So just being really open-minded, really listening, but also having a very deep sense of right and wrong and justice. I think the longer we do it, the more we have to watch ourselves that we don't sort of become desensitized to bad things and lose our sense of right and wrong.
Talk about how you, I don't want to say carve out a niche, in that I don't want to typecast you there. But what about human trafficking pulled on your soul? And how did you carve, not carve an identity, because you're a person outside of it, but how are you like, that this is what I would like to spend years of my life doing? And I've got a follow-up question when you get done with that one.
Yeah, I didn't really set out to do it. It found me. And I think a lot of people find that in their careers, that the best things, the best opportunities sort of find us rather than us planning them. I had been on the trial line, we call it, in Cobb County for less than a year. Trial line means you get all kinds of felonies. Anything that isn't a specialization, like homicide, special victims cases, it's going to the trial line. And I was known for I tried a lot of cases. I loved trying cases and had success with it. Vic Reynolds comes along and just asks me, will you go to the special victims unit? And the honest answer is, I didn't know if I wanted to.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know if I wanted to. I didn't know if I wanted to sort of deal with that subject matter every day, the darkness of it, the heaviness of it. And so at first I told him, I don't think so, but I'll think about it. And I remember going home over the weekend and thinking about it and sort of recognizing for myself that, I'm sitting here thinking as an adult who's been privileged to have this education, have this career, have this ability to make an impact, that I don't want to be around it and fill my mind with it. Well, there's victims out there who this actually happened to.
For sure.
This is their life. And so I don't want to be that person who sort of looks the other way. So I came back after the weekend, went to see Vic in his office, and I said, I changed my mind. I'm going to do it. And I'm so glad I did, because what I found is you get to have such an impact in the way that children and vulnerable people are treated during the worst thing that ever happened in their life. It's also a really incredible intellectual challenge, because by nature, crimes like child molestation or rape, they happen in secret. The only people who actually observed what are happening are the victim and the perpetrator often. So as an attorney, having to figure out how to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt is a really fascinating intellectual challenge.
So I won't say like sheltered, because I'm in my 40s and I don't know how sheltered you can be, but I am with things with this. And I say that like, I'm grateful for that. Like I'm grateful to be surrounded and have had two good parents that have been married over 50 years and lived in a house and went to a good public school and went to private school for college, and like they're still around. And I hope my kids have the same upbringing, right? But that is not everybody's situation. How, when you spend a decade, we'll call it a decade, dealing with people in the first person account in the worst thing or things that have ever happened to them, how does that not take how do you remain healthy as you?
And actually it's been
because I couldn't, like, I admire you anyway, but I marvel at like just knowing from a local government perspective on the special investigations unit of your police department and reading the weekly police reports in a really well-to-do suburban city. I was like, who the hell are these people? And they're everywhere. And I am like, I don't live in this world. Like, and sometimes it would be pages. And I was like, what is going on here? And I'm grateful that I'm still like, I still don't see it or live that way or, whatever. But talk about remaining healthy. And if you haven't, how do you deal with and then still show up and get up and do it again?
And actually, it's been about 15 years.
Okay, a decade and a half.
So, yeah, and about 13 years of that, special victims cases. And I can't believe it's been that long, but looking back, it has. So, and people ask that a lot. How do you do this work? How do all the men and women who do this work do it without it impacting them? And I say they don't. They just do it anyway. So it absolutely impacts us. But for me, it's not just about dealing with it or coping with it. It's a frame of mind, looking at it like service being a privilege. You don't look at it like, I had to do that. I had to spend my day listening to this child tell me what happened to them. Look at it like, what a privilege it is to get to walk with someone through the worst thing that ever happened to them and to give them grace and compassion and understanding. I'm grateful to every victim I worked with along the way who allowed me into that and who let me help them through that. That's an absolute privilege to be able to make that impact in your career.
I want to ask you about making the jump to work for Attorney General Chris Carr, and what does he mean to you? And Joan, we love Joan too. What do they mean to you?
Making the jump from Cobb County to the Attorney General's office wasn't something that I ever anticipated or sought out, but I learned that Attorney General Carr was looking for somebody to help him start Georgia's first statewide unit. And I was intrigued by just the opportunity to innovate, to create. My favorite thing is problem solving. And I thought it was really admirable, really exciting that he wanted to set out to do that. So I sit down with him and have that conversation. But we both sort of laugh now about the combination of our personalities back then. Because, you know, I'm a prosecutor. I spent a long time in the courtroom. And when we spend a lot of time going head to head in a courtroom, we are not always fit for society, right? Like I come into that man's office and I'm this prosecutor throwing grenades. Like, what do we need to do? And here's this guy, nicest guy I've ever met.
This is very affable.
Very affable. And he's talking about friendships and partnerships and saying all of these nice things. And I'm like, where do I throw the grenades, right? That's a prosecutor's mentality. But man, I am grateful that he took a chance on me, because what I have learned from him and that Johnny Isaacson mentality that he took with him about the friendships you make along the way, the partnerships, and how to do that. It has made me a better person. It has made me a better prosecutor. I'm so deeply grateful for the chance he took on me, the mentorship, everything that I learned from him. I truly couldn't ask for a better boss. Just the character of, it was never political. It was never about how something looked. It was, what's the right thing to do? How do we recover more missing kids? How do we prosecute traffickers in an ethical, aggressive manner? And as a prosecutor, that's all we want. We just want to be able to have the freedom to do what's right, and that's what he's about. And you mentioned Joan. Chris will be the first person to agree with this. The best part about Chris Carr is Joan Carr. Like, Joan Carr is the coolest.
This is probably like 3 or 4 years ago now. I had her on the show, and this was before we had cameras or anything, and I just wanted her to tell war stories across 3, serving as the chief of staff for 3 United States senators.
Right.
It was so much fun. And Chris is really great.
She's so much fun.
She knows where lots more bodies are buried in Washington, D.C.
She has such a wisdom, and in the same way I say this about First Lady Marty Kemp, that combination of grace and just moxie. You know, Joan Carr's got moxie. She's also got an incredible personal story in that she was born into foster care and adopted with her twin sister. And that's something, a backstory that sort of brought us and our efforts together, because a lot of those kids who might grow up in the foster care system also happen to be the same kids that are targeted by human traffickers. So a lot of my work crosses over into the foster care space, and getting to know her through that, and just her extraordinary story and success and experience has been just an incredible job bonus I didn't see coming.
Talk about the last 6 months and the transition of your current role into what you're going to be doing, and then what do you want to do when you grow up?
Very cool. So first of all, I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up. Let's start there. And it's a funny place to be in sort of mid-career, because from the time I walked into that library at my high school and typed into the internet, how do you get to law school? I knew what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. And now that I've done that and it's developed into something that's truly more than I could ever ask for, I don't know what the next chapters bring. The one aspiration I have is just to be exactly where I'm supposed to be at any given time. And I feel I am that very strongly. I feel I am there. In terms of my role transitioning, so I spent a lot of years in the courtroom. When we started out the team, that's where I was. I was in the courtroom trying the cases. And then as the team fortunately grew, because we need more and more people to do this because of the number of kids that are getting trafficked, it became teach other people to prosecute these cases. And then it became a lot more supervision. And then we had the privilege of not just having our team in Atlanta at the Attorney General's office, but actually building out teams in Macon and Augusta. And that's been incredibly rewarding too. So the job sort of evolved. And then one of the more exciting points of the evolution is the public started paying attention really quickly. The public started listening, and people started saying, I just didn't know that this was happening, in Georgia, to Georgia kids. What can I do to help? And so over the years, it became a lot more involved in the community in terms of I would go to a high school and teach high school kids how to not be lured by traffickers. I'll go to a Rotary and share with people what trafficking really is and what they can do to help. I'll be called by nonprofits who want to team up on how they can help human trafficking survivors. And this has just evolved to where I am pulled more and more from the courtroom out into the community. It's something that happened organically, but something that's really exciting for me, because I view what happens in the courtroom doesn't happen in isolation from what's happening in society. Rather, it's sort of a reflection of it. So I have found as I make this transition from being a prosecutor to now external engagement that I'm looking at, okay, this is what's happening in the courtroom, what's happening in our community, and how can we stop people from getting into the courtroom in the first place?
All right, 2 questions. Have you ever lost?
There's some nuance to that.
Oh.
And I want to say this.
You can couch
in defense, the way prosecutors should think about cases is not wins and losses.
Oh, God.
It's
Here's
really
the political
not.
answer.
I know it, but it's true. And let me tell you why. Prosecutors' role and the oath they take is to do the right thing.
Sure.
Right? We advocate for the truth, justice, all those things are true. And I know it sounds corny, but that's absolutely what our jobs are. So I'll preface my answer by saying that what a prosecutor does and their value in the community is so much more than a win-loss record. In terms of trials, I can break it down for you this way. I've had a hung verdict where jurors couldn't
Is that the one that keeps you up at night?
I wouldn't say it keeps me up at night. We resolved it through a plea afterwards. I had 2 cases as a young prosecutor where the jury convicted the defendant of a misdemeanor, not a felony. So still a conviction, not what we were going for. But in terms of
you call that a tie?
Sitting at the table, we call it justice, and the jury doing what they felt was right. But in terms of sitting at the table, arguing a case, I've never had an acquittal. So the others have been guilty verdicts.
Okay, I will give you a B+ for that answer, only because you were like, well, technically. And 2, I want to ask you, I'm not a true crime guy, but I can't help but when you find interesting cases that involve lots of different things, and I'm not saying this is in your official capacity, and I know you will have to be careful about how you take it. Talk to me about the Lindsay Clancy case, because I'm sure you're paying attention.
Everybody's talking about the Lindsay Clancy case. I think it, like a lot of cases that hit the media, and like I said earlier, what's happening in the courtroom is just a representation of what's happening in society and the things we're grappling with and the conversations that we're having. You know, and I don't want to overstep in terms of, like, I respect immensely the sort of sanctity of the juror's role in that case. But I think it's a fascinating study on just the power of narrative, right? And the way that a story can get shaped to where outside of the courtroom, man, 3 kids were strangled to death.
Right.
And when people are talking about the case, that's not what they're talking about. So I think it's a good example of the way that narrative can frame it and the way that sort of directions our society heads in.
She was clearly of means, because her legal defense team is real good. They're real good. And that's always kind of what I'm not going to say that money buys justice, but it certainly don't hurt, right? And I think the chinks in the armor that they have found, I don't know if it's reasonable doubt, but the story that they have cast about, well, the hospital knew that she wasn't well, right, without getting into it. And are they, like, how are you going to hold her responsible? She said, I don't feel safe. I feel like I might harm myself. I feel like I might harm someone else. And, like, that's pretty documented. And I'm not going to get in. I don't know enough to get into all of the mental diagnosis that I believe are real. And I've never carried a baby. And but I've watched somebody carry a couple, and I know that there's like, what happened in this? And that's not even the same thing, right? There's a difference between being hormonal and having psychosis diagnosed. I don't know how it is going to go, but I cannot shake the fact that she does not run from the fact that she did that to 3 kids. And that's, to me, is like the thing I can't get past. So I will let you do whatever it is you want to do in a way that you don't get in trouble, but I never get. Josh McLaurin was before me, and that would have been a great question for him too.
Well, and not to take anything, but I think it's a separate conversation about postpartum depression, mental health, those sorts of things. Those are really, really important conversations to be had. And if there's more we can do in that space, I'm not taking anything from the validity of that conversation and the understanding that we want to have in that realm. That said, you talk about the effectiveness of the attorney.
Man, they're good.
The fact that if you have a client who you admit strangled 3 children to death, not any children,
your own
children that her responsibility is to love and protect and nurture and care for, if you as a defense attorney can have the conversation around the country be about what everybody else did or didn't do, man, you're one heck of an attorney.
Yeah. Any thought of ever jumping on the other side, like down the road? You ever wanted to just like take the mask off and be the criminal defense lawyer you've ever you think that's out there somewhere? You scare me.
I get that a lot.
I would not.
I don't know if I should be offended.
I would not. I'd be like, I don't know. I think you've built a reputation. If you cross over to the other side, you may just wind up pleading a bunch of cases out. I don't even work for a living anymore.
I don't think it's for me. I think one of the things that drew me to prosecution specifically is that you don't have a traditional client. Right. Your role when you advocate for the state is to seek justice. That is your role, whether that's dismissing a case, which I have certainly done and view as a really important role of a prosecutor, or whether that's obtaining a guilty verdict. I have immense respect for the role of a defense attorney. Our system works when they also zealously advocate. But for me, I never wanted that internal sort of moral tension of what I viewed as the right thing or justice versus that responsibility to advocate for a client. And there's people who do that well, and I'm deeply grateful to them, but I don't think it's my calling.
All right. Well, I was just trying to solicit some clients out there. You never know what the future may hold. You'd be like, I'll do one-offs. Petty crimes? Maybe. Well, anything you want to leave us with today, Hannah? I've enjoyed talking to you because I know you, but I don't know a lot about that. I don't want to say business, but I'm grateful to not know, but I'm also, I think I'm in a curious way is like, wow, this is like it's a huge, nasty, disgusting, gross industry full of vile people. And I'm glad that people like you are out there to do it. And at the same time, I was like, I really like the lily white life the rose-colored glasses that I choose to go through the day with. I'll trade them with you every once in a while. You'd be like, this big dumb animal just walks through happy saying hi to everybody.
I think now as I'm looking back, it feels like just yesterday, Attorney General Carr and I sat down and talked about building the unit. As I look back 7 years later, what I feel the most, just this immense sense of gratitude to our governor, our first lady for making this issue a priority, to Attorney General Carr for his efforts and his work in creating this unit, but also just to the general public. For 7 years, the number of Georgians who approach me and say, hey, what can I do to help? I'm just filled with a lot of gratitude and just love for this state and a lot of optimism about the impact that we can make in this space together.
Hannah Palmquist, thank you for your time. Well, how do people find you on social media?
They can follow me and our unit's work. It's really just a fan page for our unit's work on Instagram, Facebook, can connect with me on LinkedIn, or our office has general pages where we celebrate and share the work of some other incredible units as well within the office.
Thank you for making time. This has been another episode of the Ben Burnett Show. We will see you guys next time. Make it a good one.